In 1938, the Hungarian military finally received permission to expand with the approval of the Little Entente that was increasingly feeling the German pressure. However, the army lacked modern trucks, prime movers, and armored fighting vehicles, and the situation had to be rectified as soon as possible now that war was looming once again. After initial attempts to acquire all-terrain trucks and tanks, an armored car would be the first domestically produced vehicle to join the land forces. In a previous video, I have already talked about the efforts of Nicholas Straussler, the Hungarian-born British designer of floating systems and the V3 and V4 tanks. He originally returned to Hungary in 1930 with the plans to build a new armored car, the AC-1, for the British military, relying on much cheaper Hungarian labor. He partnered with the Manfred Weiss Steel and Metal Works, which built the prototype in 1932 without the armor, as this would have violated the restrictions imposed by the Treaty of Trianon. For this reason, it was shipped to the United Kingdom, where the Elvis Car and Engineering Company installed the armor plates so that testing could begin. These revealed good off-road capabilities, but an overall poor performance, so the RAF declined the offer. In 1935, the improved AC-2 was ready, courtesy of Manfred Weiss. This received a second steering wheel and pedals in the back for an optimal use of the all-wheel drive setup, along with a new radiator before it was shipped to the UK, where Elvis installed the armor and the turret. The RAF then tested the new vehicle, this time even in the desert between Baghdad and Port Said, with mixed results. Overall performance was adequate, but there were issues with the handbrake, which tended to destroy the differential when used during movement. In 1937, the AC-3 followed with a 4-liter, 120 horsepower engine from Elvis, and eventually a few vehicles were sold to Britain, the Netherlands, and Portugal. By that time, Straussler left Hungary for good, and Manfred Weiss stopped producing the chassis, but at the end of 1938, once the Győr program was announced and open rearmament could begin, they received a domestic order for 8 AC-2 armored cars. The original prototype was modified and improved by János Korbuly, so the first vehicles were tested by the Royal Hungarian Army in June 1939. Results were good, so the new reconnaissance vehicles received the name 39M Csaba, and another 53 cars were ordered, raising the total to 61. The first series was completed and delivered by the summer of 1941, as per the Huba 1 plan, which envisaged a much larger and better equipped army. These Csaba armored cars came with light 9mm riveted armor, a smaller 90 horsepower engine from Ford Cologne, and a revised turret that had a machine gun and a 20mm anti-tank cannon. The latter was also produced domestically, based on the original Swiss model, the Solothurn S18. Interestingly, a detachable light machine gun was installed in the back of the turret, which could fire through the small hatch. All the armor plates were angled for increased protection, but of course the main objective was the detection of enemy forces, not their destruction. For that, the vehicle did not have adequate armor or firepower. A significant drawback was the high silhouette, along with the similarly high center of gravity, which required careful driving on rough terrain, but at least the Csaba still had 2 steering wheels, so upon sighting the enemy, it did not have to turn around to break contact. Still, the proper use of these armored cars would have to be learned at the front, at the cost of several vehicles. The crew consisted of 4 people, 2 drivers, one in the front, one in the back, a machine gunner, and a commander who also handled the main gun. Each armored car received a radio, but after the first series, 12 command versions were also ordered with the designation 40M Csaba, and these had 2 radios with a longer range to be able to stay in contact with the unit commander and report enemy movements. However, this variant lost the main gun and a secondary machine gun. The crew also received one or two rifles or SMGs, along with one pistol each for self-defense. Maximum speed was 65 kilometers per hour, which was more than adequate on road. The first vehicles were sent to the Army's mobile formations. Therefore, a company was created in each of the two motorized brigades and the two cavalry brigades, which were soon placed under the command of Rapid Corps. The Mountain Brigade received a single platoon, and these would also experience combat in the following years. However, the mostly peaceful annexation of northern Transylvania came next, during which the Csaba armored cars were shown in the Kolozsvár Review, along with the Army's other armored fighting vehicles, the Italian L3 or CV-33 tankets, and the Toldi light tanks. However, in April 1941, Rapid Corps, with the exception of 2nd Cavalry Brigade, participated in the Yugoslav campaign, in which no serious opposition was encountered, so combat experience remained minimal. In late June, Hungarian units joined Operation Barbarossa, and Rapid Corps, together with 1st Mountain Brigade, participated in several major encounters, mostly in Ukraine. At Uman, two Csabas prevented the breakout of a Soviet cavalry unit, destroyed 18 Soviet trucks, and also forced two Soviet tanks to retreat. For this, the Gold Medal of Bravery was awarded to Laszlo Meris, who was also promoted to the rank of lieutenant. However, by December, 70% of the armored cars were lost, only 17 of them remained operational. This was mainly due to accidents, breakdowns, and incorrect use. Commanders tended to use the Csabas in an anti-tank role for which they were never intended. In October 1941, the Huba II plan was finalized, which called for the restructuring of the Army's mobile formations into two armored and one mechanized divisions. For this reason, another 50 Csaba armored cars were ordered, and these were delivered with some delay by early 1943, because the emphasis was now on the production of medium tanks and assault guns. However, in the meantime, 2nd Army had left for the Eastern Front, and its 1st Field Armored Division eventually lost all 18 of its Csabas, so more replacements were needed. The 1942 Huba III plan called for another 70 armored cars, but this number was later reduced to 50, as the new 1943 Szabolcs plan required only 97 vehicles in total. 28 of them would be delivered to the armored divisions. The cavalry division would get 29, while the 8 fully equipped infantry divisions would receive 4 each. However, only 32 would be delivered by early 1944, when the factory was destroyed by Allied bombers, with 18 unfinished Csabas among the ruins. Back in 1943, 18 Csaba turrets were given to the Danube flotilla. These were used on armored gunboats and minesweepers. The following year, 1st Army was ordered to Galicia, where 2nd Armored Division lost only 2 of its 14 Csabas. This time the armored cars were properly used with more care. From June, 1st Cavalry Division fought in Belarus, starting out with 23 armored cars, but after a single month this number was reduced to a mere 6 due to combat losses. During the same year, 4 infantry divisions also used these vehicles in their reconnaissance platoons on Hungarian soil, eventually losing all of them. By early December, 2nd Armored Division had only 8 Csabas left, but only 3 were combat ready. Overall, 155 Csabas were produced, but from early 1944, the number of serviceable vehicles continued to decline as the war slowly consumed everything. We can say with confidence that it was a good design with some flaws and a limited range, but it performed well on the battlefield as long as it was used solely for reconnaissance with appropriate attention by its drivers. Unfortunately, not a single Csaba survived the war, so today we only have the blueprints and replicas, nothing more. In the end, it was a good effort from a smaller country that never intended to end up in a global conflict, but could not avoid being in the way. Interestingly, a new design was finalized in the 1950s using the Chaba as its basis, but as the Eastern Bloc gradually switched to Soviet equipment, it was shelved along with other promising projects.